Hello, Internet. Thank you so much for joining us for today's event, Crafted Future, Code for Good. I'm Nick Bornstein, General Manager of the Webby Awards, and I'm thrilled to welcome you to today's conversation. Today marks the start of a brand new season, the 6th season, of our Crafted with Code series, a program we've hosted in partnership with our friends at WP Engine for the past 6 years. Now, in this series, we spotlight Webby-recognized digital projects and the leaders, brands, designers, and agencies who are blending creativity and technology to build meaningful, award-winning experiences. This year, we're beginning the season with something I care deeply about, a focus on purpose and impact, themes more important to the digital ecosystem than ever, because lasting change doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's only possible when nonprofits, agencies, platforms, and communities come together to create work that resonates. At the Webbies, we're incredibly passionate about spotlighting the projects that truly make the internet a better place. And today, we'll explore what it takes to design digital experiences that not only inspire, but also move people to act. Now, alongside today's conversation, we're also launching a brand new Crafted with Code video showcase, which is available now on WP Engine's YouTube channel and website. These stories highlight the designers and leaders behind Webby-recognized projects, some of whom you'll hear from today, and we'll also share links in the chat so you can dive into this work even further after the event. Now, of course, this comes at a very special moment for us at the Webby Awards. We'll be opening the 30th annual Webby Awards season, yes, 30th, on Tuesday, September 9th. So mark your calendars, because for 30 years, we've had the privilege of honoring digital creativity and excellence, and it all began with websites. So this is an especially fitting conversation, and we really hope to see your work entered this year. And who knows, maybe even spotlighted in this program in future seasons. Now, without further ado, I'm delighted to introduce our incredible panelists who will guide today's conversations. I will bring them out one by one, starting with Dr. Jocelyn Rainey, President and CEO of Brooklyn.org.
Hi, I'm excited to be here.
Hello, Dr. Rainey. We're really excited to have you. Next up, we have Austin Whipple, Technical Director at Teal Media.
Hi, everyone. Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Hey, Austin. And finally, Susie Geiser, Senior Manager of Agency Partnerships at WP Engine.
Thank you for having me. Excited about today's talk.
Awesome. Well, welcome, everyone. It's so great to see you all and to have you here. I thought I'd sort of start by kicking things off with intros. I'd love for each of you to tell us a bit more about you and your work and how it connects to creating digital impact. Why don't we start, Dr. Rainey, with you?
Sure. So Brooklyn.org, which was previously Brooklyn Community Foundation, is a philanthropy that is focused on how to make an impact in community by using community. So we are a community-led philanthropy, and our work is hyper local, focusing on Brooklyn, which would be the third largest city if it was a city in America, with close to 3 million people. It has 33% of the nonprofits that are doing incredible work across the borough in order to help communities thrive. And, our role is really how can we bring community into this work in a meaningful way, make sure that their voices are heard, make sure that we're approaching philanthropy from the ground up and not from the top down. Media, we are very media driven. We think that media is the great equalizer. It's the way that we're able to bring everyone in. It's the way that we're able to tell our story. So it's a very important piece of how we do this work and has even become more so.
Wow, I didn't realize Brooklyn would be the third largest city. That's a great factoid. Well, thank you so much. It's fascinating work. And Austin, I'd love now to hear more about you, obviously a close partner with Dr. Rainey and Brooklyn.org, but tell us more about you and your work.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm a technical director at Teal Media. Teal Media is a woman-founded, woman-led, full-service digital agency. We do design, marketing, website work, and we partner with nonprofits like Brooklyn.org and others, as well as mission-driven organizations nationwide, to help them do as much good as possible and help bring their message into the digital landscape. For me personally, what that means as a technical director is I just lead the functional and technical aspect of any given project for any given client, making sure that what we build online is as easy to use, it functions really well, and it fits into the overall client strategy, both digital and offline. So serving as a representative of the dev team throughout the lifespan of a project, and then sort of in perpetuity after a site goes live, keeping it up to date and fresh.
You are a client's best friend, some might say.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Susie, also a client's best friend in some ways. I'd love to hear more about your work, especially at WP Engine, and sort of how it relates to what we're talking about today.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, I'm Susie Geiser. I work with our agency partners at WP Engine. So what that means is I get to work with some of the most creative agencies out there, like Teal Media, and we help them bring bold ideas like Brooklyn.org to life on our platform. So we're the technical platform where Brooklyn.org lives and which Teal Media builds upon.
Well, thank you all for giving us those intros. We'll dive in a lot more to each of your work, but I thought it would be helpful now to talk a little bit about today's theme, which is sort of this idea of building or coding for good. I'm really curious what that means to each of you in 2025. I think impact has evolved and changed in many different ways, but I'm curious for each of your definitions maybe about what that looks like. And Susie, why don't we start with you on this side now?
Yeah, absolutely. So building for good is about trust and reach, especially for nonprofits and their digital presence. It's never been more important. It's the primary way to get behind the mission and to drive donor support. So I think that having your digital presence is kind of like your calling card, and you can really make a lot of impact by having your digital presence meet people where you want them to see you.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Rainey mentioned this idea of community. I think that will probably come up a lot today, but it sounds like, Susie, that's also connected to really understanding your community and meeting where they are.
Yeah, absolutely. For nonprofits, people want more than information. They want to feel connected to the mission. They want real life stories and outcomes. And it really helps drive everything that the nonprofit is looking for. So maybe that's donor support. Maybe it's mobilizing volunteers, driving community support. So all of those things are incredibly important.
Yeah. Dr. Rainey, I'm curious for your thoughts and sort of how some of that resonates to your work.
Yeah, I think that building for good is making sure that there is accessibility and understanding that you have a lot of different stakeholders that you're bringing to the table through your website or through media, and that you want to make sure there's something there for everyone, but that everyone feels immediately when they get on the website that this is the place for them. So there are donors, there are folks who want to volunteer, there are actual nonprofits, there are people looking for services, there are staff members and board members. And so it has to be a place that everyone feels like is welcoming. And also in this day and age, making sure that we have the ability to be able to bring our programming into people's worlds through media, right? So being able to do webinars and training and folks being able to sign up and it feeling seamless is hugely important. And I think this project was a really good example of how you do that well, and how you're able to to quickly get online and see who we are through media.
Yeah, absolutely. And Austin, care to sort of join in and add on that, because you obviously work so closely on that particular project.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm going to start sounding like a broken record pretty quickly, but at Teal, we partner with our client organizations that know their communities best and they know what's good for them. So while we're the experts in some aspects of this, it's really the clients who are the most expert in their community. So it's pairing that knowledge together. So, everything starts small. We build with empathy, right? Reach out to those that know the community, build and target sites and engagement to those folks. And, these days doing good can be considered a bad thing, ironically. So, at Teal, we've chosen to stick to our core values, back up those that we work with as best we can, and just continue to press clients to increase their engagements whenever possible.
Well, it's an interesting thought, and we'll get into this shortly. But, Susie, are you also feeling like this idea of impact changing? I mean, are you seeing that really evolve and shift even within the last couple of years, and sort of where that might fall into coding for good or sort of building for good?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like we mentioned earlier, people aren't going to websites for information only anymore. They want to understand the nonprofit. They want to understand the brand, right? And so, the digital storytelling is incredibly important. Meeting your audience where they are. So, there's so many platforms that folks will look at information, right? So, you've got your website, you've got your social. You also have mobile. So being able to have that digital presence and keep it seamless is incredibly important. And that's how you are able to be a digital storyteller and really engage in your audience and get the efforts that you would like out of that. So
Great. Well, I'd now love to turn to your award-winning work, Dr. Rainey and Austin. This was a really special project. Brooklyn Org and Teal Media were recognized at last year's Webby Awards as a winner in our websites and mobile sites community category, which, just for the record, is a very competitive category. So I think this work really, really stood out to our academy and to the community. So huge congratulations to you both. I'd actually love to share a short clip from your Projects Craft with Code video, which will give a little bit of context. So check that out.
Coding for good means building ethically and with intention. For the Brooklyn Org site, the tech stack was built around WordPress as the core CMS, using a custom theme that we developed with PHP, JavaScript, and Alpine, and CSS. We created a large library of flexible components to help editors easily curate their stories and engage with the community. WP Engine's reliable managed WordPress hosting gave us a stable, high-performance foundation to build on, delivering a fast, responsive experience for all site users. We also highly utilized WP Engine staging environments, allowing the client to review new features before pushing them live.
Awesome. And again, those in the audience, please feel free to check that out on the WP Engine website and YouTube channel to learn a little bit more. But Dr. Rainey, I'd love if you could just share how this project came together and why it was an important step for Brooklyn Org.
Sure. So our amazing, my chief of staff, who is also heads communications, had been keeping an eye on brooklyn.org URL, which had not been purchased by anyone yet. And so we bought the URL because we recognized that it was a great opportunity for us to reach a larger audience. So through a connection one of our board members had, we were able to seize the moment and bring on Mother New York. And we went through a rebranding process, and it allowed us to really be able to expand our work and also to work towards how we actually implement our new bold strategic plan. So the website inspired the new name, which became Brooklyn Org. And we think of this as, our organization being deeply committed to community-led philanthropy. We consider ourselves Brooklyn's organization. And it really helped us to tell our story a lot better than we had been previously. And we knew we needed a new website to fully represent our vibrant new rebranding. And then Teal Media came through with a project proposal and the team's expertise we needed in order to make this come to life and update our vision. So that's how this came to fruition. It started with a free, still available URL that we thought really told our story clearly.
That is incredible that in, a couple years ago, brooklyn.org was still available. That's amazing.
It's amazing. No one can believe that when I say that. It was still available.
Well, I'm glad you got it. It fits perfectly for what you all do. You mentioned and Brooklyn Org is the first and only public philanthropy for Brooklyn, which as a Brooklyn resident means a lot to me. But I think what's so special about the ethos of the organization, as you mentioned, is really this idea that it puts decision-making in the hands of the community. I mean, it is really for and by the community. Did that philosophy shape how you approached the digital identity or sort of how you approached any of these sort of efforts with sort of building a more technologically forward experience?
Yeah, we absolutely. It's at the forefront of everything that we do. Our communities makes decisions on where our funding goes. We listen to community. We do listening tours, and we wanted to make sure that our website was reflective of that. That community knew that this is a place they can go for information. We also serve on this website as a platform for our nonprofits to do fundraising as well around Giving Tuesday time. So we wanted to make sure that it was really reflective of a resource for community, and that we wanted to make sure that community felt like they were a part of this, because we put all of our decision making into the community's hands. So it was very important to us that when you go on the website, that you immediately feel as though this website is for community, but community means a lot of different things. It doesn't just mean, the folks that are benefiting from the resources. It also means the folks that are giving of their resources.
Right.
And one of the things that's really important to us is that everyone feels like they can be philanthropic. You can be philanthropic at every level. There's a lot of different ways to engage. And the website for us is a way of saying, showing that story. If you go on our website today, you'll see our volunteer day. And that's a day when anyone can come in, and volunteering is philanthropy. And maintaining that feeling is hugely important to us. And I just want to say that Teal Media has been really great at, as Austin said, like they brought our vision to life, but also in helping us and helping us to be able to understand like what is the best way to use our website. So my team will also often refer back to Teal Media when thinking about like, what do we want to put on the front page? What is going to be the most impactful? And that partnership has been really important in this process.
Well, it shows. It really does. And Austin, you have done a lot of mission-driven work at Teal, everything from like Omidyar to IMALS, Center for Justice Innovation, these amazing organizations. But, I believe you said before that websites should be easy for visitors and administrators. And I think that there's an interesting tie-in to what Dr. Rainey is saying as sort of a vision, an administrator, but also needing your support on the technical side. How do you sort of balance sort of having a polished experience for the public while also making it manageable for the folks at Brooklyn.org?
Yeah, it's a lot about setting reasonable guardrails, right? Like there are a lot of WordPress page builders out there. You can do a lot of good with those. You can do a lot of damage with those, and they can take a lot of time, especially when, not every organization has dedicated website management folks or comm staff that have the time to dedicate to their website. And those sorts of intense page builders that offer lots of customization take a lot of time to, match design language and brand and all that. So what we do is set some reasonable guardrails with convenient kind of light automation. And so at the outset of any project, our design team sets out to make a beautiful site that's accessible, interesting, highly engaging, and make sure it meets brand standards. So you get these nice Figma comps that look perfect and match the brand and all that kind of stuff. The dev team is then handed this responsibility to just not break that. Ultimately, like it's beautiful. We want to make sure that we as a dev team honor that design as much as we can, but also make it flexible and usable by the admin. So for each project, we build these sets of components. Those components are then used to compose individual pages. We have what we call a BYO layout builder, which is similar to a page builder, but slightly more restrictive, to be pejorative about it ultimately. But what that means is that we have these purpose-built components that when they're added to pages or used as larger page templates, they only ask for the information that they need to build themselves, right? If you want to personify these things, we're not asking a busy comm staffer to sit down for an hour and a half to create a press release or anything like that. We just ask for the content it needs, check a couple boxes for taxonomy work, click publish, it's up there. It's related to all the other content it needs to be related to, and it matches brand standards and matches the beautiful design that the design team cooked up at the start of the project. So it's all about making sure that we don't create more problems than we're solving. It needs to match the editorial workflow. We want to match business processes that exist. And then this design philosophy paired with those taxonomies to relate content means that admins can move in and out of the website experience pretty quickly, because we recognize it's a quarter at most of most of our clients' job. They've got, frankly, better things to do than manage WordPress. They've let us do that work for them and make it as easy as possible. So it's a tough balance. It's one that we take pretty seriously to strike, so that folks get the most out of it on the client side as well as the front end.
Well, and because you've worked with so many great organizations, I'm curious what made Brooklyn.org unique and maybe what it taught you or what it can teach us about building something truly authentic for community and sort of that unique proposal that they have as an organization.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, Teal Media works with clients of all different scale and different target audiences. What we love specifically about Brooklyn.org and their website was just how community driven it was. Some folks, think tanks, they're sort of very cerebral and their audience is a bit of a diaspora. Brooklyn.org, geographically centered folks that work there, live there. And so it's pretty rare that we get to work with a client that is so community driven and knows who they're there to support so well. So that was really a joy to work through that process to build a website specific for that community with folks who know it so well.
Well, I love how visual the experience is. It really puts people at the center, these gorgeous photo images throughout the experience. I imagine that was really intentional, right, Dr. Rainey? Sort of this idea of putting a face and a voice to the people and organizations you support.
Yeah, it was very intentional. Part of our work with Mother New York was having those photos and those graphics and being very intentional about what this looks like and that you get a feeling of Brooklyn. Initially, Brooklyn Community Foundation had a Brooklyn Bridge, and we think of that as like going in and out of Brooklyn. But Brooklyn.org is more about what's happening inside of Brooklyn and using photos and imagery that is really about what's happening within Brooklyn. And, we think of our website as our digital home, and it drives our audience to get involved. And we want folks to feel like it's someplace that they feel excited about exploring. So they're able to dive into issues, learn facts about Brooklyn in general to make decisions on where they want to do their philanthropy, how they want to do their philanthropy. We want to make sure that there's, calendars, and all of that is there within our website. But the imagery of seeing, our subways and block parties and carnival is hugely important to who we are. And Teal Media took that and they created what we envisioned through Mother in our website. So it feels like our office. When I go to a meeting, I can tell folks, like, go to our website. You're going to get everything. I don't have to bring a deck or a white paper, right? Like, it's all there and it's easier to explore and it's more exciting.
Yeah. Well, I know the remit was wanting the website to feel authentically Brooklyn, and it does. And I think it's really special. Susie, WP Engine is often the tech backbone behind projects like this. I'm curious where you see infrastructure being most critical in helping nonprofits and agencies like Brooklyn.org or Teal bring these stories to life.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I love that Dr. Rainey said that it's their digital home, because working in tech, a lot of times people are like, what exactly do you do? Right. And so the way that I always give the analogy is we're essentially the plot where somebody wants to build their dream website, right? And we work with Teal Media, who is the digital architects that build that dream site for Brooklyn.org. And so the platform that they build on is us. That's where their house kind of lives, if you will. And we want to make sure that it's performant, it's reliable, it's scalable, it's secure. It has everything that they need to make sure that their site is up. It's running performant, so there's no lag or downtime, right? That really affects their messaging or donor support, or if you're a nonprofit brand, that could be, different methods of revenue dollars or whatever that looks like. So uptime percentage is huge. Also reliability. We want to make sure that your site is available for everybody to go anytime they want to go. Anybody around the globe that wants to go to Brooklyn.org can. right? Also, it's incredibly secure. That's a big thing. We want to make sure that their brand is secure. And so we put a lot of security within our platform as well, and scalable, right? So the goal is for, with this webinar and the Webbies, that Brooklyn Org gets a ton of traffic on their website, and WP Engine is there to make sure that their site supports all of the traffic of all the folks that are going to Brooklyn Org to learn more about the organization. So we're essentially the plot of land where their digital presence lives.
I love it. We've set up the metaphor. It's WP Engine is the plot of land. Austin is the architect to build the home that Dr. Rainey is building. It's all connected.
Absolutely.
Well,
And then WP Engine and Teal Media are the code enforcement, and we work together to make sure everything is good to go.
Well, and WP Engine works so much in open source. I'm curious, Susie, how does WordPress uniquely support nonprofits or impact organizations in scaling their impact maybe compared to closed systems?
Yeah, absolutely. So with WordPress being open source, it gives nonprofits a level of freedom that closed systems just can't match. So what that means is, if you're on WordPress, your organization is not locked into a rigid feature set, nor is it locked into licensing pricing. So it gives nonprofits the flexibility to kind of grow how they would like to. So they can start off small with just like a donation form, or they can move into an enterprise grade campaign. And so WordPress can grow with you through all of those stages. Also, it gives a lot of flexibility to the different organizations at nonprofits. Austin mentioned that not everybody has a huge tech team in-house. And so being able to have that flexibility and to be able to update their content without tapping a developer on the shoulder is like incredibly important, and it's cost effective. Also, cost effective is really important for nonprofits as well. And so within WordPress, there's a lot of themes, a lot of plugins. There's a lot of options. There's also a huge community behind WordPress that is coding and developing and putting towards the ecosystem. And so a nonprofit also has the same accessibility to those type of tooling as a Fortune 500 company on WordPress. So,
well, hopefully many of those community members are here today, and we look very forward to any questions that arise from today's conversations. Please make sure you just put those in the chat for any of our illustrious panelists today. Austin, we've talked a little bit about how you prioritize impactful work in your portfolio. Why is that important now, and how do you make sure it's sustainable?
Sure. Frankly, I don't think Teal Media would be what we are today if we didn't make that very intentional choice to prioritize impactful work. Sort of to a person, if I look at the staff of Teal, they show up to work every day exactly because of what we're doing is impactful, and it's important to them, and it's important to the clients we work with, and it's going to make the world a better place, or we try to. So it's very baked into just the atmosphere at Teal Media. So I don't think we would be where we are today without that prioritization of impactful work. Luckily or unluckily, there's lots of progress to be made around the world for all kinds of reasons. So if Teal Media remains efficient and effective in the work that we do for clients, like, we're going to be around for a long time. There's lots and lots of work to be done, and it's sustainable in that I'm fairly certain the teams like Brooklyn Org appreciate working with Teal exactly because of the folks that we have hired who are so invested in the work, right? We have the same attitude. We're on the same team. We're pushing in the same direction and looking for the same outcomes. So it's integral to Teal, and I think it is our success because of that.
Well, and Joey Hernandez, who's one of your colleagues at Teal, mentioned in the Crafted for Code showcase this idea that coding for good is building ethically and with intention, which I loved that sentiment, and I think it's reflected in all the work that each of you do. But I'm curious, I'll start with you, Austin. How do you and your team sort of put that idea into practice, building ethically with intention? That seems to be such a sort of mantra for your work, but maybe talk us through how you actually execute that.
Yeah, it's just bringing humanity into the work and listening to the community that we're working with. That's why the client partnership is so important, because they know their audiences and their community most often better than Teal Media does. So it's working with them to devise the ways that we can make the most impact for those folks as human beings. And working with nonprofits is all emotional. It's all empathy driven. We're not selling shoes, so it's not an easy transaction. We have to make an emotional engagement to get someone to volunteer or to donate. These are relationships that our clients are building with their audiences, because it's more than just an individual transaction. It's they need to understand that organization, feel what that organization is doing is important, and then emotionally engage more so than financially engage. So we just kind of ground that as much as we can, and build good products that achieve that goal.
And I know you don't sell shoes, but I would gladly purchase a Brooklyn Org shoe, Dr. Rainey.
We have plenty of shirts and bags and lots of merch.
Okay, great. Everyone, please click over to Brooklyn Org to find that. Susie, audiences are really expecting brands, organizations to connect to real world challenges. Obviously, Brooklyn Org has talked a bit about that, but from your POV working with agencies and partners and nonprofits, what do you think is like the first concrete step in building in a connection in a way that lasts, especially with these types of organizations?
Yeah, I would say listening. When you're first launching a project, before you can design a campaign or launch a site, you really have to understand the community that you're serving, who you're trying to reach, what they value, what challenges they face, and what motivates them. And so really understanding like what the vision looks like. And that's something that Teal Media does an amazing job of. Agencies play a really huge role here. They face the job of helping the nonprofits like be their digital presence and have that storytelling and emotional connections, so people are motivated to go out and volunteer or donate or just be a part of something bigger than themselves. And so being able to do that seamlessly on many platforms and meeting them where they are through like accessibility or inclusive stories or anywhere that like kind of speaks to their audience is a great project to work on. It's a big feat, but once it's accomplished, it can do amazing things.
Yeah. Well, one thing that we keep talking about that I love, especially when talking about technology, is this idea of empathy. How do we sort of create more care, more empathy, more connection across design, marketing, et cetera? It's not just usability. It's really sort of understanding these tools. I'm curious, Austin, you talked a little bit about this, but how are you designing for empathy? What choices are moving people in your experience from awareness to engagement?
Sure. Again, I'll start sounding like broken record pretty quickly. It's client agency partnership is critical to, clients know where they want to go, don't always know how to get there. That's where Teal Media steps in to help guide in that direction, to make sure that the message they're trying to relay does make sense to the audiences that they're working with. And so when it comes to engaging with those end users, we sort of try to, as much as possible, gently guide the experience to hit client goals. So a little goes a long way. And again, it's a kind of a slow emotional engagement, for better or worse. So it's a big emotional ask to get somebody to donate or sign up, or even giving their email address, knowing that they're not going to get a whole lot in return other than, altruistic understanding that they're helping what they're aligned with. So we at Teal Media, we focus on, trying to gently gain trust and build alignment with an organization, and sort of keenly aware of how to do that in the overall user experience. So ownability is huge. We want to build experiences where if you just swap out a logo, it would look like somebody else. So has come up a couple times. Brooklyn.org looks like Brooklyn org, which looks like Brooklyn. And so that's very important to build that emotional connection and get people to engage with these very, very emotionally driven asks. So we do when talking about branding or site design, it's important to include something that is unique, interesting, very much ownable by the client as that brand differentiation, because those differentiators accentuate the organization so that the audience understands clearly that they have alignment, and when you have that clarity of tone, the audience understands what they're signing up for, why they're signing up for it. And that lowers that barrier to entry, because again, even asking for an email address can be a lot. So it's important to guide folks there very gently and build that emotional alignment.
I'm curious, Dr. Rainey, from your perspective, what does it take? I mean, this is such a big question, but what have you found in your career? What does it take to really build that sort of trust, as Austin mentioned, or that sort of authentic connection between a cause and an audience? There's a lot of trust on the line, so I'm curious how you find that.
Yeah, trust is everyone, right? Like every one of our stakeholders, trust is really important. Like folks have to really trust that you're going to use their resources in a meaningful way, and that you care, and that it's going to get to the right folks. And you have to be able to tell stories really quickly about how it's impacting folks. And I think that, the Brooklyn.org website really does that. But I did want to go back to what Susie said earlier about a Fortune 500. I say to my team every day that I need us to show up like a Fortune 500, even though we don't have Fortune 500 money, right? But because folks want to feel like I'm investing in something where this organization cares enough to have a platform that is inspiring and well done and easy. And, no matter how altruistic people feel or how much they want to do good, they want to go to things that are easily accessible and easy to navigate and that they feel safe with. So you feel safe within our digital home, and we want that to be important. We want that to be key, but we also want our nonprofits to feel like it could also be their digital home, and that we're telling their stories in a way that is authentic to them and authentic to Brooklyn. And then we have the folks that need the resources, that want to learn more, and we want to make sure that that's there as well. So there's this balance of making sure that our website is accessible, it's equitable, that everyone can get there, and that people who are investing their hard-earned dollars into community feel like it's a place that they can trust. And so the website has really given us that, like, where folks feel like I can trust Brooklyn.org because they're investing and everything that they do is at the highest of caliber. And to something that Austin said, it really goes back to the team. I get the opportunity to be the figurehead, but our team also believes in that. And so they're the ones who work day to day with Teal. If I have a question, and make sure that things happen, hold my feet to the fire around managing the website in the way that it was supposed to be managed. When I'm like, oh, I want to put this on the front. Well, and one more thing I want to mention is that our website is also really created for new visitors as well. So when someone hears about us, or we're doing something, a webinar or something like that, when folks go there, they're immediately like, oh, I get that. I understand what's happening. And that's what we're able to do at our website at brooklyn.org.
Well, and all of you have mentioned sort of there's individual needs, obviously, for each organization, but there are sort of these, I guess you would call them best practices that sort of emerge as you're trying to amplify impact or really trying to work with these types of organizations. But, do you feel like, Susie, there are standards or benchmarks you encourage or look for across the partners that you work with, especially when they're trying to build with intention or ethics? Like, are you seeing certain things show up in the work consistently that are really effective?
Yeah, so the type of agencies we love working with are ones that within their design framework, they care about the details. So they care about accessibility. It's prioritized from the start. Their content is exclusive. Data privacy is maintained. Like, that's incredibly important. So it's important for the agencies that we work with that the work just doesn't look good, that it functions responsibly for everybody. And that's a huge part of Teal Media and how they work and how their design framework. For us, we want to make sure that sites are accessible. We want to make sure that sustainability is part of it. So what that means in our world is performance optimization. Not only is that better performance for the audiences that are using the site and the folks that are working on the site, but it's less of an environmental impact as well. Accessibility is huge, right? So we want to make sure that we are following the web content accessibility guides and making sure that all of the sites that we work on are accessible and inclusive for everyone. And then we also want to make sure that data and privacy is recognized and supported. We want to make sure that users are aware of how folks are collecting their data and how it's being used. So all of those design frameworks are incredibly important when we work with an agency partner, because we want to make sure that their standards are as high as our standards, as high as Brooklyn Org standards, and it's consistent all the way through.
Great. That's really, really helpful. I'd love to now just talk briefly about impact. There's great impact to be had here, and Brooklyn, Oregon Teal, you mentioned that in the Craft with Code video, and it's really staggering. But Austin, I'm curious, how do a high impact digital experience translate a brand's message? Especially, what does that mean for user experience today? There's such a massive era around AI and personalization. Curious to hear your thoughts there.
Yeah, authenticity, which has come up a few times, humanity and community is just becoming more and more critical, in the age of AI and sort of very slick, polished presentations. Audiences are looking more and more for a really real connection. Again, this is fundamental to nonprofits and that need for empathy, but folks are looking for that connection, I think, now more than ever, because it's getting rarer and rarer, especially online. So to me and to Teal Media broadly, is building for good means for doing everything you can to ensure and convey an organization's humanity comes across online. What tools can we use to enable an authentic connection online? Are we offering something that is adding value to a user experience, or is it just, climbing onto a fad train? And then how can we differentiate one organization versus another and show what really makes them special, either through storytelling or other ways that reflect the community? Mm-hmm. And then it's really, really important, especially for groups like Brooklyn Org, is just not to center real people, right? Not tokenize and make generalizations, is center real people, showcase the impact and the authenticity of that organization. And that real clarity people can get behind ultimately.
Yeah. Well, and I think what's so great, as we talked about too, is Brooklyn Org as an example, but most of the work that you all do can scale pretty massively. And, I loved what you were saying, Susie, too, this idea that you can access Brooklyn Org anywhere in the world, right? There's a global impact. But I think that there can sometimes be a common misconception that impact isn't scalable, or, but in truth, I think what we all know is that ethics and purpose are often quite good for business at times. And so maybe Austin, on that end, especially since you work with so many great purpose and mission-driven organizations, do you have an example of when that proved true?
Best example I have is Teal as a company. Sort of, as I said, we're very, very grounded in our core values. We have very, very much prioritized a certain type of organization that we work with. So I think we're a solid example of how ethics and purpose can be scalable. Teal started around 16 years ago by our founder, so a team of 1 to now 45 people, profitable, successful business. Again, so a pretty solid example of, you stick to your guns on what you stand for, and it can prove to be a successful and scalable way. We've from day one focused on being creatives with a conscience, which is our tagline, only working with these social good organizations. And we're still centered on that ethos of being good people, doing good work for good causes. And that's great for both our staff and our clients. So it's all of the recipe for success of a solid business.
Susie, what about you? Do you have any examples in sort of the WP Engine ecosystem with clients about sort of scale, sort of impact really serving scale?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a lot of core values here at WP Engine: built for growth, customer inspired. We have a lot of core characteristics that we abide by, like as we work with our customers and our agency partners. And so we really try our best to be very thoughtful about how we show up for our customers, providing them with the ability to grow and scale. We talked about nonprofits starting with like just a donation form and then moving to like enterprise grade digital campaigns. And we help them along the way, right? As they grow, we give them more resources. We provide products and services for them as well, right? Like, tech talk, but like headless platforms. And, we all know what e-commerce is, but we give them the ability to grow into like accepting payments, donations, whatever that looks like, merchandise, selling merchandise. And so we grow with them while kind of guiding them and working with our agency partners who can kind of consult with them as well. So they get the best of both worlds, working on our platform that can grow with them, working with digital architects, agency partners that can facilitate their growth. And then, we really just listen to like what they're looking to do. You're starting here, but like, we want you to grow and we want you to have all the traffic and we want to support you through that. And so we've seen a number of our customers grow alongside of us. And it's really fascinating and wonderful to be a part of.
That's awesome. I love to hear that. I have just one or two more questions for the group, and then please, those of you in the chat, ask away. We really are excited. We've seen some great questions come in, and we'll save a little bit of time at the end for that. So now, please, if there's other questions that come up, go ahead and drop those in the chat. But, Dr. Rainey, one final question I just had around sort of community is, this idea that technology can really help surface communities and voices that are often overlooked or underrepresented. And I'm curious, from your perspective, how do you think the work in the digital space can be done to make sure that those voices are included, whether it's related to funding or storytelling? Curious to hear your approach or thought on sort of technology as a way to surface communities and voices.
I mean, when you see our digital communications, you see Brooklyn. You see real neighborhoods, actual nonprofit partners, and everyday Brooklynites. They're represented. And we think that is really key to making sure that everyone is included and sees themselves. We think that people, they need to see themselves, their communities, and in the storytelling and things that shows their real lived experiences and the experiences that are familiar to them and their families. And so we feel like media, our website, actually absolutely does that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I feel it. Again, as a Brooklyn resident, can't say it enough. It's felt. Well, I'd love to ask one final question before we open it up to the audience. If you could make one piece of advice or give one piece of advice to this audience around making work that's both impactful and sustainable, what would it be? Help this group understand how to do this work. Susie, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I would say, gosh, your digital footprint is your calling card, right? It's what builds trust. It's how people see your organization from the inception, right? So just have clarity and be consistent with your story. Be really clear of what you're trying to do, who you're trying to serve, the impact that you're trying to make, and then be consistent with that story as well. If you show up with your mission authentically, you just build that trust throughout time, and that steady conversation of who you are becomes scalable. And so if you just start with clarity and then just be consistent, I think those are the two things that I would recommend.
I love it. Clarity, consistency, and be yourself, which I think is true online and off. Austin, what about you?
Pretty similar. Yeah. It's clarity of purpose, authenticity. I can't emphasize enough how important being authentic to yourself is, right? And centering, celebrating, collaborating with the real people. And that will help you stand out and reach those folks that you want to reach. It's centering the stories of real people answers a lot of the why questions that folks ask when they're going to a website. So that helps folks understand what the nonprofit is about. Plus, creating those spaces for storytelling might surprise you of the kinds of things that people will align with. So real stories and being as authentic as you possibly can to your organization and its goals.
Great. And Dr. Rainey, last one to you. What is advice you would give to making work that's impactful and sustainable?
I think that absolutely being really clear about your mission and your vision and sticking to that, making sure that it's concise and it's tight and that you can tell a story and you can tell it really quickly. Your why matters. It really matters in this work. And I think from a nonprofit perspective, is that, there is no programming, no philanthropy, and development without really good communications that speaks to everyone, and not just to small groups of folks. So investing in your communications is really important. And I think that this project is a clear example of what that looks like. We've seen so much growth in who is now engaged in the foundation, who visits the website, and then how they work with us as a foundation afterwards. So being clear, being concise, and being true to who you are as an organization is really important. And making sure that you have clear communications, so that, folks have a place to go in order to be able to hear your story.
Well, this has been so wonderful. Thank you to each of you for all these amazing insights. We're not quite done though. Stick around. We have a couple of questions from the audience that I'd love to share. This is something that came up that I think is really important to talk about. The question is, how are you navigating these times where purpose-driven, empathy-driven, impact-driven work is under threat with reduced funding and other challenges? I'd love to hear more on this, and I think this is a really important conversation to have. I'd love maybe Dr. Rainey to start with you around sort of how you're managing this time around impact, both online, but also with your organization in general.
I think that it's a really difficult time. Folks don't have to invest in DEI or racial justice work or social justice work. And people are also feeling afraid for themselves. Like, everyone is impacted by the high cost of living and all the changes that are happening across the country. So it is difficult to get folks to engage. But I will say that what I do know is that people want to help people, and that, it's important to be able to find different inroads to how you can support people. We've seen our individual giving go up during this time, and really making a lot of different opportunities for people to invest in their communities, and saying, hey, there's no, any amount is something, and this is how we do this work. So I think that it's a really difficult time. Everyone is struggling, not just those of lower incomes are struggling to make ends meet. It's everyone. You're seeing it at the grocery stores and everywhere, and that impacts where people give. But I think making people see how you're doing this work in a way that is helping their neighbors to thrive, but you're also focusing on, like, what are the things that I see when I walk out my door every day that makes me feel uncomfortable, and this is how you could support that. And trying to bring everyone to the table for ideas. And our communications has really helped greatly with that.
Well, thank you. And again, amazing work that you're doing. And I highly recommend those here today consider supporting Brooklyn.org and visiting the website to learn more. Austin, we've talked quite a bit actually about your work around these spaces. I'd love to maybe ask the same question to you, is how are you all navigating these times? Obviously, you've built such a sustainable business for, I think you said 17 years, but what does this look like for you in this current ecosystem?
Yeah, it's tough. And a lot of times it's finding out ways to do more with less for our clients, of like really simplify the objective, simplify who we're talking to, and spend your time there to make the most of what you have. Because, resources have been reduced, and the practicality of it, whether it's federal funding or less motivated donors or folks that frankly just can't support what they want to support at this time. So it's really, really getting purposeful with where you're spending your time and money to make sure that you make the most of it. That's really important. And like, just the sector as a whole is so personal. There's also aside from the practicality of making sure you're really focused on where you're spending your time, there's also just like taking care of yourself, because nonprofits generally, like, people are so connected to the work that they're doing that can be really damaging. It leads to lots of burnout, and especially when you're under fire all of the time. Sometimes it seems it's important to take care of yourself so that you can do the work that's important for others.
Great. Susie, anything you want to add on this front as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think that WP Engine is a really empathetic company, right? Like we really try to meet our customers where they are, and really help them grow. So there are many different sizes of technology platforms for different organizations, and we try to be really thoughtful about starting somewhere where it feels comfortable, and then also consulting along the way as their present and their footprint grows. Also being empathetic to our agency partners. Working at an agency, running an agency, like they're running full sprints all the time. And so we want to be really thoughtful to them and help them any way we can by consulting from a technology standpoint, getting our solutions engineers involved, getting our leadership involved. They're amazing. They're happy to jump on any calls as well, and just really support them from that tech standpoint. Also be kind of a connective tissue for all things WP Engine and WordPress, and kind of give the latest and greatest and all of that, and just really be supportive is what we try to do to both of our customers and our partners.
Love that. One final question that we didn't really get to, but I'm curious to get your takes on is there was a question about work that was done for security around branding. You know, I think this idea of security is interesting. There was a question, Hannah, if Hannah's still here, can you talk about what was done for security around branding? I don't know if I totally understand the second half of that question, but you know, curious maybe to talk more generally about sort of security and sort of folding that into digital experiences. Maybe Austin, you can talk through that just a bit.
Yeah. Many ways and facets of this particular question, you know, at the very base level, starting with solid infrastructure is really important because there's all kinds of attack vectors that can come at you from your hosting environment and infrastructure. So making sure that you partner well there to get a good, secure hosting platform, fundamentally important. I mean, some things that like our clients particularly don't really think about. So that's where kind of Teal and WP Engine step in as the experts in that field to do that kind of work. When it comes to the application itself, like again, WordPress, it's been around so long, it powers so much of the internet, like it in and of itself has a lot of attack vectors that when we're building out the application or the web that drives the website, really important to stick with best practices, be really thoughtful about plugins that you might choose to install, do as much kind of limited functionality additions, build only what you need. Otherwise, you're opening yourself up for failure. And then just ongoing monitoring, right? Like we have a team of developers that keep an eye on security vulnerabilities. And there are also notifications that we get from hosting platforms saying, hey, you want to update this because there's this new notification. So just on the technical aspect, there are just so many things that are up in the air when it comes to security. It's just focus on the fundamentals and just be aware and keep your scope as limited as possible to reduce the number of attack vectors. Mm-hmm. Then when it comes to security of users' data, again, this is where we partner a lot with applications, SaaS products that are purpose-built for this. There are lots of donor management platforms that are really, really good and really, really secure. You want to use something like that rather than spin up a gravity form that submits user information to who knows where, right? Like you want to think about the full process of where the data is going to make sure that it is secure, because sort of to bring in the brand aspect of this, you can really blow up your brand if you have some notification in the news saying, hey, every brooklyn.org email address was just leaked. That's a catastrophe. So it's really important to think through every aspect of where that data is going and how it's going there to make sure that it is secure and keeps the brand, just perception intact.
Great. Well, thank you all so much, Dr. Rainey, Austin, Susie. This has been such a wonderful conversation, and we're all so grateful for your thoughts and insights and really the incredible work you've done. I also want to give a big thank to Susie and our partners at WP Engine who are really helping us spotlight these important conversations through the Crafted with Code program. Be sure to check out the full spotlight and more online. Again, the link is in the chat. We'll be hosting several more of these throughout the season, so look out for those. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say for everyone turning in, just a quick reminder that the upcoming 30th Annual Webby Awards call for entry season launches on September 9th. It's going to be just a really amazing season celebrating 30 years, and we can't wait to see some of your work this season. So thank you again all for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, y'all.